Millionaire helps a mechanic without knowing his true story. The night air in Austin still carried the echo of violins from the charity gala when Olivia Carter's BMW suddenly coughed and died on a quiet street far from the city lights. Dressed in a long emerald gown, she stepped out, heels tapping against the cracked pavement of a neighborhood she had only ever passed through from a distance. The contrast was sharp. Her perfume still clung to the evening, but here the air smelled of oil, iron, and dust. A faint glow came from an old garage where a young man worked alone, his sleeves rolled, grease on his hands, determination in his eyes. Olivia hesitated, but destiny seemed to pull her toward that dim light. She didn't know that in that silence lay the beginning of a story that would change her life forever. If you enjoy stories like this, stay with us until the end. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Olivia Carter had never noticed how quiet a city could be after midnight. Austin's music felt far away now, swallowed by an empty block and a sky without stars. Her BMW sat mute at the curb, hazard lights blinking like a tired heartbeat. She hugged her shawl around her shoulders and looked across the street. The garage sign was missing a few letters. What remained read, John N's Auto. A single lamp burned inside, yellow and steady, as if refusing to give up. She stepped carefully over a pothole, the hem of her green gown brushing the grit. From within came the sound of a ratchet clicking, and then a short, low curse, not angry, just focused. The smell of warm oil and cut rubber met her like a wall. Olivia hesitated at the threshold. In the corner, a coffee maker older than she was gurgled. On a pegboard, wrenches hung in size order, polished from use. Neat, intentional, nothing like the stereotype of chaos she had imagined. The young mechanic noticed her in the reflection of a chrome bumper and turned. He had a clean jawline and tired eyes. Grease darkened his knuckles, but his gaze was clear, steady. He wiped his hands on a rag that had once been white. "Evening," he said. "Rough night?" "My car died," Olivia answered, and hated how obvious it sounded. A few blocks down. He nodded once, as if this were the most ordinary confession in the world. "I'm Ethan," he said. "Ethan Miller. We can take a look." He fetched a flashlight and a portable jump starter without asking for a description of the problem. He didn't offer small talk, and that was a relief. They walked back to the BMW, their steps sounding different on the uneven sidewalk. Her heels sharp, his boots steady and soft. He circled the car, listening, hand lightly tapping the fender as if greeting an animal. "Pop the hood?" he asked. She pulled the lever. He propped the hood and leaned in with the flashlight, shoulders squared against the night. Olivia watched his focus. He did not rush. He checked connections, belts. A fuse he lifted with a tiny tool. When he spoke, it was mostly to the machine. "All right," he said. "Try the ignition." She sat, turned the key. The engine clicked, resisted, coughed. Ethan's head dipped closer. He tapped the battery terminal with the back of the ratchet and listened again. He moved the ground cable, tightened it with 2 quick turns. "Again," he said. This time the engine caught, barely, then died. He didn't flinch. "You're close," he told the car, not her. He pulled a small brush from his pocket and scraped corrosion from a clamp, then set his portable starter, checked the meter, and gestured. Olivia turned the key. The engine roared alive like a deep breath finally taken. She laughed, more from relief than delight, and the laugh surprised her. It felt young. Ethan closed the hood and stepped back. The hazard lights kept blinking, useless now in the bright sound of the motor. "How much do I owe you?" she asked. He looked at the curb, then at her. "Cost of the brush and the clamp," he said. $7. "7." She stopped. Arguing would be silly, and something in his face warned her not to push. She opened her clutch, found a 10, and held it out. He took it, fished a few singles from his pocket, and offered the change. "Keep it," she said. "Please." He hesitated, then folded the bills back into her hand. You might need coffee before morning, he said. Take it. No thanks felt correct. She nodded, slipped the singles into her clutch, and only then noticed the calluses at the base of his fingers, the small nick healing at his wrist, the faint, stubborn soap scent under the oil. Dignity, she thought, and a line in his posture that said, "Don't pity me." "I owe you a review," she said, half a joke. "If you have a website." "Just a door," he said. "It's always open." A rusted sedan rolled by, music barely audible inside, and the neighborhood swallowed the moment. Olivia glanced at the garage down the block. "Mr. John?" "Mr. Johnson," Ethan supplied. "He owns the shop. I close up for him sometimes." "Does he pay you enough for midnight calls?" Ethan smiled, a small, tired thing. "He pays me in trust," he said. "Money comes later." She wanted to ask a dozen questions about the order on the pegboard, the careful way he handled the brush, the life that made trust sound like salary, but she stopped. It would be unkind to ask a stranger to explain his pride. Instead, she said, "Thank you, Ethan. You saved me from a very long walk in a very wrong pair of shoes." "Then it's a good night," he said. He tapped the hood once, the way a doctor might pat a shoulder after good news. "If it stutters again, come back. I'll be around." She left the engine purring and lowered the window. "Do you drink coffee in the mornings? There's a cafe near the river." "I'm usually at the shop by 6, he said quickly, not unkindly, a fence going up. "But there's a cart 2 blocks over. Best cinnamon rolls in the city. I go when I can." A beat. "You should try them." "I will," she said. She wanted to know why he had declined as if burned. She didn't press. "Good night, Ethan." "Night, ma'am." "Olivia," she corrected. He nodded once. "Night, Olivia." She drove away, the hazard lights now only a memory in the rearview mirror. When she turned the corner, she checked the mirror one last time. Ethan was walking back toward the yellow door, shoulders set, the rag tucked in his pocket like a flag of truce. Morning came with emails and promises. Olivia kept a tidy calendar. Board meeting at 10, site visit at 2, call with the foundation at 4. She handled each task with practiced grace, but the image of the pegboard kept returning, like a refrain. At lunch, she opened her laptop and searched the shop's name. Nothing. No website, no social page, no listing, just a map pin dropped roughly on a block labeled with a tire store that no longer existed. In a quiet impulse that felt like honesty rather than charity, she packed a box, a set of new shop rags, a sealed pack of nitrile gloves, a coffee thermos with a screw-top lid, 2 energy bars, and the $10 bill she had tried to leave behind last night, folded like a note. She wrote a card, "For the shop. Thank you for the help." "Oh," and drove back to the block while the afternoon sun turned roofs into mirrors. The shop door stood open to the heat. Mr. Johnson was there this time, a man in his 60s with a baseball cap and careful eyes. He saw the box and lifted his chin in a question. "I'm returning something," Olivia said, smiling. "Must be important," he replied, but his tone was kind. "I'm Dean Johnson, Olivia Carter." She offered her hand. He shook it with hands that had known work for decades. "Ethan told me about last night," Mr. Johnson said. "He doesn't like attention." "I gathered." As she placed the box on a cleared corner of the counter, Mr. Johnson peeked at the contents, then at her, impressed despite himself. "You didn't need to do that." "I know." She looked around. The neat pegboard again, the tools, set down with care. "But I wanted to." "Your shop. It feels like someone respects this place." At the far bay, Ethan emerged from under a pickup, sliding out on a creeper. He saw her, froze for a heartbeat, then wiped his hands and approached. There was something different in his stance, guarded maybe, or simply surprised to see the emerald gown transformed into a clean blouse and jeans. "You made it to morning," he said. "The coffee cart?" she asked. He almost smiled. "Not yet." Mr. Johnson snorted. "He lives on stubbornness and air." Ethan gave the older man a look that carried affection. Olivia watched the exchange and saw it clearly. Not employer and employee, not exactly, but a thread of loyalty tied between them by something older than payroll. "I won't take your time," she said. "Just wanted to say thank you, properly." "Consider it said," Mr. Johnson replied. "We appreciate good neighbors." Olivia nodded and stepped back, ready to leave. Then she paused, turned to Ethan. "If you ever want to draw up a service menu," she said, "or make a simple flyer, I could help. Pro bono, it's something I do for a few non-profits." A flicker crossed Ethan's face, not greed, a memory maybe. "Thank you," he said, careful. "Not sure we're ready for that." "No rush," she said. "Doors stay open." She left to the sound of an impact wrench, chattering briefly, and then stopping. On the sidewalk, she inhaled the smell of hot tar and distant barbecue and realized her day had shifted a few degrees. Small things do that, she thought. A brush on a battery, a door without a website, a young man who returns change at midnight. Back inside, Ethan set the thermos on a shelf where he kept his own few things. A folded t-shirt, a paperback with the spine cracked, a pair of headphones with one ear taped. He ran his thumb over the metal lid, as if testing its seal. Mr. Johnson leaned on the counter. "You could say yes, you know," he observed. Ethan shook his head. "I don't want to owe anybody." "Gratitude isn't debt," Mr. Johnson said. "Sometimes it's just a bridge." Ethan looked toward the open door, where the streetlight would glow again in a few hours. "Bridges fall if you overload them." "Or they carry you across," Mr. Johnson replied softly. Ethan said nothing. He picked up the rag, folded it in half, and went back to work. But later, when the sun slipped and the shop cooled, he poured coffee into the thermos and took a sip. It stayed hot longer than his old mug ever had. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The heat stayed with him while he tightened bolts until the threads sang. Outside, the block began its slow change from day to night, and somewhere, not far, a BMW merged into traffic with a quiet, reliable hum. Saturday morning in Austin brought a restless heat, the kind that seeped into sidewalks before noon. Olivia Carter adjusted her sunglasses as she parked across the street from Johnson's auto. She had told herself she was only here to check on the car, to be sure the fix had held. But the truth felt heavier in her chest. She wanted to see Ethan again. The garage door was half open. Inside, Ethan crouched beside a pickup, his back straight, shoulders squared. The radio played low, a country song about roads and promises. Mr. Johnson sat on a stool, sipping from the thermos Olivia had left, nodding along with the beat. Ethan noticed her before she spoke. He wiped his hands on a rag and approached the sidewalk, sweat streaking his forehead. "Car still running?" "Perfectly," Olivia answered. She lifted a small paper bag. "Thought I'd test your recommendation. Cinnamon rolls." A flash of surprise crossed his face, so quick it might have been imagined. But then his eyes softened. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," she said, echoing his own words from the night before. They sat on the low curb near the shop. Olivia placed the bag between them, tore a piece of pastry, and handed it to him. He hesitated, then took it, careful not to brush her fingers. "They really are the best," she said, licking sugar from her lip. Ethan chewed slowly, as if the roll were heavier than food. He didn't eat like a man tasting sweetness. He ate like someone remembering hunger. "Do you live nearby?" Olivia asked. His jaw worked, then paused. He swallowed hard. "Not exactly." She waited, not pushing. The silence stretched, filled by the chirp of cicadas and the squeak of Mr. Johnson's stool. Finally, Ethan spoke. "Couple years back, I didn't have an address. Slept behind the rail yard for a while, sometimes in shelters, sometimes nowhere." Olivia turned to him, but his gaze was fixed on the asphalt, on a crack that ran like a scar across the street. "I kept a small box of tools," he continued. "Didn't matter where I went, I carried it. Figured if I had my hands and my tools, I still had something worth trading." "Mr. Johnson found you?" she asked gently. Ethan nodded. Gave me a cot in the back of the shop, said I looked like I knew what a wrench was for. Truth is, I'd been learning from my uncle before he passed. After that, it was just me. Olivia studied him in the glow of late morning. Sweat darkened his t-shirt. Grease marked his jeans, but there was no shame in his tone, only fact, only dignity. Did you ever... She hesitated. Lose hope? Ethan's mouth curved into a dry smile. Hope is easy to lose. But dignity? That's harder. I told myself I'd never trade it, not for a bed, not for a fix, not for anything. Her throat tightened. She thought of the gala 2 nights ago, tables heavy with food, crystal glasses ringing with laughter, and how small it all seemed beside the quiet strength of the man next to her. Mr. Johnson called from inside. "Ethan, talk wrench!" Ethan rose, brushing crumbs from his hands. "Duty calls," he said. Then softer. "Thanks for breakfast." She nodded, clutching the bag in her lap, as if it still held something precious. That afternoon, Olivia found herself at her parents' estate, the Carter mansion that overlooked the Colorado River. Guests floated through the wide halls, sipping cocktails. Her mother, elegant in pearls, introduced Olivia with pride to a circle of businessmen. But Olivia's mind kept drifting back to the garage, to the way Ethan had refused pity, to the sound of his voice when he said dignity. She excused herself early and drove back through the city's arteries until the towers gave way to narrow streets again. Johnson's auto was closing, the garage door rolling down. Ethan was locking the side gate. "You're working late," she said, stepping out. "Engines don't care about clocks," he replied, pocketing the keys. She laughed softly. "Do you ever rest?" He considered, then shook his head. "Rest comes when work is done. That's the only rule I know." The streetlight buzzed on, painting his features in amber. Olivia studied him, trying to frame the contradiction. A man who had slept on concrete, yet stood with the posture of someone unbreakable. "I have a guest house," she blurted before caution could stop her. "It's empty. You could stay there until you're steady." His shoulders stiffened. "I don't take charity." "It wouldn't be charity," she said quickly. "Consider it trust, like the kind Mr. Johnson gave you." For the first time his eyes lifted to hers and stayed. She saw hesitation, pride, and something deeper, a hunger for belonging he tried hard to bury. "I'd pay rent," he said finally, voice low. "Only if you want to," Olivia answered. He exhaled a long breath and nodded. "Maybe. For a while." The cicadas sang louder, filling the silence. That night, Olivia lay awake in her room, city lights flickering beyond the curtains. She replayed every word, every pause, every glance. She realized she had stepped past the boundary of gratitude into something else, something she couldn't yet name, but felt growing like fire under the skin. And across town, in the back room of Johnson's auto, Ethan packed his few belongings into a worn duffel, a change of clothes, a dog-eared book, his box of tools. He paused, running his hand over the pegboard one last time. For the first time in years, he would sleep in a bed with a roof above. Still, as he zipped the bag, he whispered to the dark, "Don't let me lose myself," because dignity, once traded, was gone forever. The guest house behind the Carter mansion smelled faintly of cedar and clean sheets. Ethan stood in the doorway with his duffel and toolbox, unmoving, as if the room might vanish if he blinked. A ceiling fan whispered overhead. Through the small window, live oaks bent like patient guardians. He set the toolbox down first, always the toolbox, then the bag. He ran a finger along the dresser's edge and felt dustless wood, a surface that belonged to no one and everyone. Olivia appeared with a spare set of keys on a leather fob. "The thermostat's tricky," she said, smiling in apology. "It likes 72 and throws a tantrum at anything else." "I can work a thermostat," he answered, but the words came out softer than intended. Gratitude sat heavy in his chest. They moved through small instructions. Extra towels under the sink, coffee pods in the drawer, a note on the counter with the Wi-Fi password written in neat letters. When she turned to leave, Ethan said, "Thank you." He meant more than the room. He meant a door opened without paperwork or suspicion. "Tomorrow," Olivia said, "there's a brunch after the foundation meeting. People I work with, folks from the city, a few donors. If you don't mind, would you come by? I'd like you to see this other part of my world." He looked past her at the big house, its windows reflecting late sunlight like polished coins. "I don't know those rooms," he said. "Then I'll walk you through them," she replied. Sunday was all glass and cut fruit. The Carter lawn held white tents and round tables dressed in linen. A quartet played under a shade tree, bright, precise notes that never tried to be more than background. Waiters in black moved like chess pieces, placing pitchers of water and plates that looked like still-life paintings. Ethan paused at the edge of the patio, his boots touching stone that had never known engine oil. He wore a clean button-up shirt and the only slacks he owned. He had shaved. The air smelled of citrus and clipped grass. Far off, the river winked through the trees. Olivia came to him in a tea-colored dress that made her eyes look almost amber. "You made it," she said, as if relieved the room might have swallowed him on the way. "I almost turned around at the gate," he admitted. "I would have come looking," she said, and there was a steadiness in her voice that pushed back the edges of the crowd. She introduced him slowly, like learning to wade rather than jump. To Mrs. Alvarez, who ran a literacy program, to Mark Henson, a city planner who spoke in maps, to a young couple who cradled a baby as if the world might bruise it. The small exchanges went well. People smiled, shook hands, moved on. Then came a table where smiles never reached the eyes. Two men in sport coats, a woman with a pearl clip steadying a perfect chignon. "Olivia," the woman sang, "you've been impossible to catch." Her gaze flicked to Ethan's boots and back up, tallying, sorting. "This is Ethan Miller," Olivia said. "He's a friend," one of the men finished, amused. "From which club?" "From work," Ethan said simply. The second man cocked his head. "What line?" "Auto repair," Ethan replied. "A mechanic," the woman said, the word polished to a sheen. "How practical. Olivia, dear, you've always had a heart for community." Something in the way community stretched told Ethan what the sentence chose not to say. He kept his face still. The quartet shifted into a waltz. Mark Henson reappeared with a grin and a napkin folded into a map. "Olivia, good, you're here. The East Side Garage Initiative. The zoning change is sticky, but... Oh, sorry, am I interrupting?" "Not at all," Olivia said, grateful. Pearl Clip smiled, as if indulging a child's drawing. Zoning and garages at brunch. How charming. She reached for a glass. "Excuse me." They moved on. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he held. "I shouldn't have come," he murmured. "Yes, you should," Olivia answered. "They only have power when we believe them." "Belief is stubborn," he said. They reached the driveway where a line of cars glittered like beetles in the sun. A low murmur rippled through the nearest cluster of guests. A silver coupe refused to start. Its owner, an older man with a tan that came from boats, not roofs, turning the key with increasing disbelief. "Can't be the battery," the man muttered. "It's new. This car costs more than my first house." "Everything costs more than your first house," someone joked. Olivia glanced at Ethan. He shook his head once, small. "It's not my place," he said. "Since when do machines care about place?" she answered. He went to the coupe. The owner squinted. "Valet?" he asked, not unkindly, simply the logic of the room. "Mechanic," Ethan said. "On a Sunday." "Machines don't keep calendars," Ethan replied, and the owner actually smiled. Ethan listened, then asked for a flathead and a flashlight. A waiter produced a butter knife. Ethan took it, crouched, popped the fuse box cover, and leaned in. He touched the fuse heads the way a pianist might test keys. "Try it?" he asked. The owner turned the key. The engine coughed, then nothing. Ethan pulled one fuse, held it to the light. The filament was a blackened thread. "You've got a short in a circuit that shares power with your starter relay," he said, voice calm. "It's intermittent, just enough to steal a breath." He walked to the buffet table, tore a thin strip from the corner of a linen napkin, rolled it into a tight wick, and returned. The crowd hummed. He used the wick to hold tension on a slightly loose relay connector, improvised, temporary, precise. "Now," he said. The car woke, surprised, and then sure. The owner looked at Ethan the way men look at weather that has spared their harvest. "What do I owe you?" Ethan stepped back. "A phone call tomorrow to your regular shop," he said. "Have them check the relay mount and replace the fuse. Don't drive far today." "Money," the man insisted, reaching for his wallet. "Donations table," Olivia said, gesturing toward a discreet box where checks disappeared like well-fed fish. "If you'd like." The owner laughed once, low and honest. "Done." He extended his hand to Ethan. "You're good." "I'm careful," Ethan replied. Applause started. Not loud, not a performance, just a small wave of hands meeting palms, the sound of a room that has been taught to notice itself. Ethan's ears burned. He caught the flash of Pearl Clip's expression. Surprise, then something tighter. One of the sport coat men clapped twice, dry and minimal, a man acknowledging a trick. "Impressive," he said, "and here I thought you were here to park cars." "Easy mistake," Ethan said. His voice didn't sharpen. It didn't need to. Olivia stood a little closer to him than before. In the corner of her eye, she saw her mother watching from the terrace, face unreadable. The music lifted, and the moment thinned. People returned to plates and conversations, to gloss and plans. "Walk with me," Olivia whispered. They slipped around the side of the house where the lawn dropped toward the river. The air cooled in the shade. Dragonflies stitched blue lines over the water. "You were perfect," Olivia said. "I fixed a loose connector with a napkin," he replied. "That's not perfect, that's a patch." "Sometimes a patch saves the day." Ethan looked at the river, jaw working. "You heard them." "I did," she said. "And I heard you. That matters more." I felt like I was back at the shelter line," he said quietly. "People decided what I was before I opened my mouth. It's a strange thing to walk into a room and have your name traded for a role." Wind moved the oak leaves. A boat engine droned far off. Olivia touched his sleeve, nothing dramatic, just a human anchor. "You don't have to come to these," she said. "Not if they cost you that much." He shook his head. "I have to learn the rooms if I'm going to build something that grows beyond a bay door. I can't hide behind engines forever." She turned to face him. "Then I'll stand with you in them." He met her eyes, and for a heartbeat, the line he'd drawn around himself flickered. "That's dangerous," he said, but there was no warning in it. It sounded like wonder. A voice cut across the shade. "Olivia." Her mother approached on the flagstone path, posture straight, smile careful. Up close, she looked like the older portrait versions of Olivia. Same eyes, same mouth, history stitched in pearls. "Mom," Olivia said. "Introduce me," her mother requested. "Mom, this is Ethan Miller," Olivia said. "Ethan, my mother, Margaret Carter." Margaret offered her hand. Her grip was warm, real. "The mechanic," she said, not as title, simply as fact. "Yes, Mom," Ethan said. "I saw the relay improvisation," she added. "My father would have approved." Ethan blinked. "Your father?" "He ran a small engine shop on the south side before the city found him," Margaret said. "He taught me that competence is a language anyone can understand if they want to listen." She looked at Olivia. "Dinner is at 7. There's a seat if your guest wants it." Olivia exhaled, surprised into a smile. "Thank you." Margaret nodded once. "Don't make guests walk back alone. The lower path can be slippery." When she left, Olivia and Ethan stood in fresh silence. "Your mother," Ethan began. Has more history than people give her credit for, Olivia finished. She hides it under china and schedules. They started back up the path. As they reached the corner of the house, Ethan stopped. "I need to say this while I still can," he murmured. "I don't know how to be in your world. Today felt like standing on a dock with one foot on a boat and one on the pier." "Then we'll build a bridge," she said, echoing Mr. Johnson without knowing it. "I don't like bridges I can't repair," he said, but he swallowed. "I want to try." The quartet's song shifted, and the light did too, sliding over them like a blessing. From the driveway came the sharp laugh of one of the sport coat men, then the hush of tires. Somewhere in the crowd, a story was already being told about the mechanic who fixed a rich man's car with a napkin. Somewhere else, another story took root. Quieter, slower, a woman in a tea-colored dress and a man with careful hands learning to walk the same room. They stepped back into the soft carpet world together. The eyes would still weigh, the jokes would still test. But the boat had edged closer to the pier, and the water between had smoothed. Inside, a waiter passed with a tray. Ethan reached for nothing. Olivia reached for nothing. They did not need a prop. They had the sound of an engine turning over clean, and the whisper of a mother's unexpected welcome. And under it all, a feeling that did not announce itself with trumpets, only with a steady human warmth, not a patch, but a promise. The week after the brunch felt like walking across uneven ground. Olivia carried herself with the same elegance at boardrooms and charity meetings, but her thoughts wandered to the way Ethan's eyes had hardened under judgmental stares. She remembered the napkin trick, the applause, her mother's unexpected kindness, and the pearl-clipped woman whose smile had been sharper than glass. At the guest house, Ethan worked late into the nights. He fixed loose hinges, rewired an old lamp, patched the screen door so the summer insects stayed out. He moved with quiet purpose, as if proving that his presence was not a burden. Olivia sometimes found him crouched over an engine schematic, pencil smudges on his hands, brows furrowed in study. He was reading business manuals now, books she had tucked into a box near the coffee maker. One evening, she stepped onto the porch with 2 mugs of tea. The air was heavy with the smell of cut grass and the faint hum of cicadas. "You're building something," she said, watching him scribble figures in the margin. Ethan closed the book slowly, just trying to understand how numbers talk to each other. Engines make sense. You hear them, you feel them. But business, it's another language. "You'll learn it," Olivia said. "You've already proven you can." He looked at her then, really looked. "You believe in me more than I do," he murmured. She wanted to say someone has to, but instead she touched his wrist, light as a question. He didn't pull away. Saturday arrived with another invitation, this time to a gallery opening downtown. Olivia thought carefully before asking him to join. The memory of the brunch still weighed between them. "Are you sure?" Ethan asked, as he adjusted the cuffs of his clean shirt. "Art isn't exactly my crowd." "Art belongs to anyone who feels something when they look at it," she said. "That means you." The gallery gleamed with white walls and champagne glasses. Abstract canvases glowed under careful lights. Olivia introduced Ethan where she could, gently, but the undertones were harder to ignore this time. "Your friend, does he collect?" someone asked, gaze lingering on Ethan's work-worn hands. "He fixes engines," Olivia answered with calm pride. "Engines," the word was repeated as if it were a foreign dialect. "How refreshing." Ethan's jaw tightened. He excused himself to the balcony where city lights pulsed like restless stars. Olivia found him there minutes later, leaning against the rail, shoulders rigid. "They don't mean harm," she said carefully. "They don't mean respect either," he replied. "Same difference." Silence stretched. Below, traffic whispered along the avenue. Olivia stood beside him, letting the hum of the city carry their pause. "You don't belong here because they don't see you," she said at last. "But I see you. That has to count for something." His expression softened, but his voice remained low. It counts for everything. I'm tired of fighting a room before I even speak." "Then don't fight the room," she said. "Change it." He turned to her then, eyes fierce in the glow of neon. "With what? Wrenches and scars?" "With who you are," she whispered. For the first time, he let the wall slip. His hand brushed hers, rough skin against smooth. The touch was brief, but it carried the weight of confession. Weeks passed, and the world around them adjusted in quiet ways. Ethan rose early, worked at the shop, then returned to the guest house where Olivia sometimes joined him for dinner. They cooked together. Simple meals, laughter over burned toast, long talks about everything from music to childhood dreams. One night, a summer storm rolled across Austin. Rain hammered the roof as Olivia set candles on the table. Ethan sat across from her, hair damp, shirt clinging to his frame. "Where would you be if Johnson hadn't found you?" she asked. He stared at the flame. "Probably under the overpass near 5th Street. That's where I stayed most nights. And now? Now!" He exhaled, almost laughing. "Now I'm eating pasta by candlelight with a woman who should be far out of my orbit." "You're wrong," Olivia said softly. "We're exactly where we should be." The storm cracked above them. Without planning, without hesitation, Ethan reached across the table and took her hand fully this time. His grip was strong, but trembling. Olivia's breath caught, not from fear, but from recognition. Something had shifted. The shift did not go unnoticed. At a dinner the following week, Olivia's closest friend Caroline cornered her near the powder room. "Liv, I have to ask, the mechanic, Ethan, is this serious?" Olivia lifted her chin. "Yes." Caroline's smile faltered. "People are talking. You know how this city works. They'll twist it. They'll say you've lost your judgment." "They said the same when I funded the shelter downtown," Olivia replied. "And now it's a model for the state." "This is different," Caroline pressed. "Charity is one thing. Romance is another." Olivia's voice cooled. "Then let them talk." Caroline hesitated, then sighed. "I hope you know what you're doing." Olivia left the conversation with her heart hammering, but her resolve clear. Later that night, Ethan found her on the guesthouse porch, staring into the dark. "You're quiet," he said. "People are starting to notice us," she admitted. "They'll never stop noticing," he said grimly. "You'll always be the woman in the gown, and I'll always be the man with grease under his nails." "Then we'll redefine what that means," she answered. For a long moment, neither spoke. The cicadas had gone silent, as if even the night waited. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a broken watch, the band frayed. "My father's," he explained. "Stopped working years ago. I carry it anyway." Olivia touched the cracked face. "Why show me this now?" "Because," he said, voice low, "if you're going to walk into rooms with me, you deserve to know what I carry." She closed her hand over his. "Then let me carry it with you." And for the first time, Ethan allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, dignity and love could live in the same house. The heat broke in early September, and Austin began to breathe again. Mornings came with a cool edge that made coffee taste darker. Olivia woke before sunrise, pulled on a sweatshirt, and crossed the lawn to the guest house with a folder under her arm. Through the window, she saw Ethan at the small table, shoulders bent over a notebook, lips moving as he calculated. The sight made her chest ache, the way he wrestled with numbers like they were stubborn bolts. She tapped the glass. He looked up, surprised, then smiled in that guarded way of his, and opened the door. "You're early," he said. "You're earlier," she countered, lifting the folder. "I brought something. Don't throw me out." He arched an eyebrow. Olivia set the folder on the table and spread out a clean one-page canvas. Auto Tech, draft service menu. No logo, no flourish. Just work done, price ranges, and notes about fair estimates. "I thought you might test a structure," she said quickly, afraid pride might bristle. "Change anything, tear it apart." Ethan didn't touch the paper at first. He studied it like it might bite, then eased into his chair and read every line. Halfway through, his fingers found a pen and began adding notes in the margins: adjusted labor times, parts alternatives for lower budgets, a line item for diagnostics that respected the time it took to think. "It's honest," he said, voice low. "If we post this, we have to live it." "We will," Olivia said, and then caught herself. "You will. I'll be next to you. But it's your name people need to trust." He tapped the paper, then looked up. "Our name," he corrected, and the word felt like a door he had unlocked without planning to. They spent the morning making columns. Mr. Johnson stopped by with kolaches and a skeptical look that softened into approval as Ethan walked him through the logic. When he reached the diagnostics line, Johnson chuckled. "About time a shop charged for brains the way it charges for hands," he said. "Most folks don't know the cost of listening." By noon, the page was messy with ink and coffee rings, and Ethan's posture had shifted from wary to engaged. "We'll need a business account," he said, "and a card processor that doesn't bleed us." "I'll schedule a bank meeting," Olivia offered. He nodded, then hesitated. "I should go," he said. "With you, I need to learn the questions to ask." The bank smelled like lemon polish and waiting. They sat across from a man with perfect hair and a desk that swallowed papers. His nameplate read Coleman Business Services. Coleman steepled his fingers when Ethan spoke, polite interest flattening into something else as Ethan's calloused hands traced numbers in the air. "So," Coleman said, "a repair shop. Plenty of those. What differentiates you?" "Honesty," Ethan said simply, "and consistency. People don't just buy a fix, they buy trust." Coleman smiled the way people do when a child says something charming. "Trust is important," he agreed. "Collateral is more important. You have property, existing revenue, credit history." "Revenue, steady but under Johnson's books," Ethan said. "Credit, spotty. Homelessness complicates records," Olivia added, keeping her tone neutral, refusing to flinch. Coleman's eyes flicked to her, recalibrating. He recognized her last name. You could see the moment it clicked. Respect arrived late and tried to cover its tracks. "Ms. Carter, I didn't realize." "Ethan is the applicant," Olivia said. "I'm a partner." Coleman's smile returned, new and brighter. "Of course. In that case, we can explore a secured line. Perhaps start modest and grow with receipts." Ethan watched the performance with the same stillness he used in front of a humming engine. He said thank you when he needed to, asked precise questions about fees, and wrote everything down. When they left the marble coolness of the bank, the sun hit them like news. "Did you see it?" he asked quietly. "I did," Olivia said. He flexed his hands as if they hurt. "Every room has a test. Then we'll keep passing." He didn't answer, but his shoulder brushed hers as they walked. A private agreement, small and steady. They spent evenings at the guest house building the bones of a place that didn't exist yet. Olivia designed a simple sign on her laptop, Auto Tech Garage in block letters, and Ethan rejected fonts with the same decisiveness he used to reject worn brake pads. "No lies," he'd say. "No fluff." And they settled on a typeface that looked like it had weight. On Wednesday, Mr. Johnson called them to the bay. "A test for your honesty," he said, and waved a minivan forward. Inside was a woman with tired eyes and 3 kids arguing about a toy dinosaur. "Single mom," Johnson murmured. "Brake light on, money thin." Ethan took the car for a careful loop, listening with his whole body. Back on the lift, he brought Olivia close and pointed. "Pads are fine," he said. "Sensor clip's bent. It's telling a story that isn't true." He straightened the clip with needle-nose pliers, snapped it back, cleared the light, and turned to the woman. "No charge," he said. "Just a bent clip." She stared at him, uncertainty fighting relief. "Are you sure?" "Clips bend," he said. "Happens." When she drove away, Smiling in the rear view, Ethan wiped his hands and looked at Olivia. "That's the brand," he said. "Not the sign. That." She thought of pearl clips and linen napkins and answered, "That's the legacy." They were learning each other's rhythms now. Olivia teased a laugh out of Ethan that he didn't know he had. Ethan taught Olivia the satisfaction of a bolt turning smooth under the correct torque. They built a shelf together in the guest house and argued cheerfully about whether a mile was best measured by steps or songs. On Friday night, they burned pancakes and ate them anyway on the porch, while an old radio found a soul station, and the oaks turned the wind into low applause. "You're different when you work," Olivia said, fork suspended. "How?" "You listen more than you speak. You treat problems like living things. You never show off." He considered. "Machines punish pride," he said. "People do too. And reward humility? Sometimes," he said. "Sometimes they mistake it for weakness." "Then we'll teach them the difference," she said. His eyes met hers. "We," he echoed, but there was no doubt left in it now, only gratitude that terrified and steadied him at once. On a bright Saturday, Olivia took Ethan to a parts warehouse on the edge of town. It was a maze of metal shelves and cardboard boxes, the air thick with paper dust and rubber smell. A man at the counter looked up as they approached. He recognized Ethan. Many clerks did. He paid in cash, remembered names, never returned broken parts without courtesy. "Need a 60-amp fuse and a relay mount for a 12 coupe, Ethan said. The clerk glanced at Olivia's linen dress, then at Ethan's clean shirt, then at their proximity. Something shifted in his face. "Prices went up," he said flatly, "and we're out of mounts." Ethan leaned on the counter, calm as a level bubble. "I called. You said you had 3. We sold them." "To who?" Ethan asked. "People with accounts," the clerk replied. His eyes cut to Olivia again, measuring. Ethan straightened. "Start me one." "Need a deposit, 3 references, and proof of location," the clerk said. "Got a lease? Or you still couch surfing?" Olivia watched Ethan's face go beautifully still, not empty, disciplined. He slid his hands into his pockets so the clerk wouldn't see them curl. "We'll go elsewhere," Olivia said evenly. The clerk shrugged. "Suit yourself." Outside, the sun was a hammer. They walked in silence to the truck. Ethan put the key in, then pulled it out and leaned his head against the wheel. For a moment, he was a man on concrete under an overpass again, holding a box of tools like a passport no one recognized. "I can call the owner," Olivia said, anger hot at the base of her throat. "Or my lawyer, or—" "No," he said, lifting his head. His eyes were bright, not with tears, but with something that looked dangerously like resolve. "Let it stand. I needed to see it again. I needed to remember what we're building this against." He turned the key. The engine caught, smooth and immediate. He exhaled, almost smiled. "Besides," he added, "there's a yard on the south side that doesn't care who you were yesterday if you know the right bolt size today." They drove to the south side. A bell jangled when they entered. The clerk behind the counter, an older woman with ink on her fingers, peered over her glasses. Ethan named the parts. She disappeared into the shelves and came back with a small box and a grin. "These little mounts," she said, "always crack on heat. Take an extra. You'll need it before winter." "How much?" Ethan asked. 10 even, she said. "And you can put the extra on a tab called Good Luck." Ethan laughed, a full sound. The woman slid a business card across the counter. "Bring me biscuits next time," she said to Olivia. "You look like you know where to find good ones." "I do," Olivia said, and the 3 of them smiled like conspirators in a kinder world. That evening, Ethan spread a large sheet of paper across the guest house table. He drew rectangles, bays, a waiting area with 2 chairs that didn't squeak, a counter that faced people rather than towering over them. He penciled in a corner labeled Training Bench. Olivia touched the word. "For who?" she asked. "For the kid who wanders in with questions," he said. For the woman who wants to learn her own car. For me when I forget why I started. He wrote another word, slower this time. Scholarships. Mechanic scholarships? Olivia asked, smiling. Trust scholarships, he said. Paid with time, with work, with showing up even when a room makes you small. She set a hand on the paper, covering the word trust like a blessing. We can do this, she whispered. He looked at her, the lines on the page reflected in his eyes. We are doing this, he said. Outside, the city settled into a softer version of itself. Somewhere a train horn called and was answered. The air through the screen door smelled like cooled asphalt and distant rain. Ethan reached for Olivia's hand, and this time there was no tremor in his grip, only a steady pressure that said, we're building, and beneath it, the blueprint of 2 lives learning to fit on one page without erasing the rough edges that made them true. Autotech began as ink and late nights. It turned into keys on a ring. The lease was for a corner bay in an old brick building off East 7th, cement floors, hairline cracked like dry riverbeds, a roll-up door that breathed like an old lung. A narrow office with a window that stuck halfway open. Ethan swept the bay himself before dawn, slow strokes that gathered dust the color of forgotten years. Olivia taped painter's paper along the wall and rolled on a clean coat the shade of primer. Mr. Johnson brought a dented percolator and a box of bolts he swore would fit everything worth fixing. They hung the sign on a mild morning, Autotech Garage. No flourish. Letters that spoke like a handshake. Cars slowed to read. A kid on a BMX bike skidded to a stop and watched, eyes bright. You fix scooters? He asked. If it turns and breaks, Ethan said, we'll listen. The first week was soft opening quiet. A delivery van with a rattle. A teacher with a check engine light and end-of-month nerves. A line cook whose timing belt sang like frayed rope. Ethan listened, then found a way to repair without breaking the paycheck. People left with receipts that read like sentences. Clear, specific, no small print that lied. In the office, Olivia brought order. She labeled drawers, added a plant that somehow did not die, and taped a handwritten promise to the counter. Diagnostics are time and thought, charged once, credited if you repair with us. People pointed at the page and nodded. It felt like someone finally said out loud what shops had always hidden. One afternoon, Margaret appeared in jeans and a work shirt, hair tied in a scarf, carrying takeout and a shoebox of old receipts. Your grandfather's writing, she said, laying the papers on the counter. He used to note every fix like a story. Maybe there's a system in there, or just a blessing. Ethan held a faded slip that said, Mrs. R. Mower wouldn't start. Listened. Found water in fuel. Drained. Taught her to drain next time. Charged $0. Paid in peaches. He folded the paper careful as a prayer and slid it into the drawer by the register. The second week, the quiet broke. A blogger posted a photo of Olivia under the Autotech sign. She'd been caught laughing, hair pushed back, sun on her cheek. The caption was sugary and sharp, philanthropy or pet project. Heiress lends hand to garage boy. Comments bloomed like mold in humidity. By noon, a city sedan rolled up, and a man in a tucked polo stepped out with a clipboard. Code enforcement, he said, polite in the way people are when they own the clock. Anonymous complaint regarding improper oil disposal and signage. Ethan felt heat crawl up his neck. We're disposing by the book, he said, steady. He opened the back room, labeled drums, spill kit still banded, a manifest taped to the wall with the first pickup date circled. The inspector checked boxes, snapped photos, measured the sign with a tape that flicked like a tongue. Signs within limit, he said. Oil setups clean. He paused at the counter and flicked the paper promise with a pen. Interesting policy. It's honesty, Olivia said. The man nodded once, unreadable. Anonymous complaints are common with new businesses, he said flatly. Some folks think the city is a chessboard. We're just a rule book. He left a carbon copy and drove away. The relief came with a sour aftertaste. Olivia pulled up the blog again. The comments had multiplied, words like social climber and gold digger thrown around backward, as if the person with grease under his nails had somehow climbed into money's pockets. Ethan closed the laptop gently. "Not our room," he said. "Not today." Traffic picked up the third week. Word had started to move the old way, across tables, across back seats, across break rooms where someone said, "Try that place off 7th. They don't treat you like a problem." A man came in with a lowered Civic and the pride that attaches to such cars. He left grinning because Ethan didn't mock the mods, only made them safe. A nurse brought a Corolla and 2 hours of exhausted silence. She left with brakes that didn't squeal, and a note on her invoice. "Thank you for your night shifts. E." In the evenings, Ethan still returned with Olivia to the guest house, but the space between them had changed tenor, no longer brittle, now tuned. They cooked without recipes, moved around each other without bumping. Sometimes he read business cases out loud, stumbling over jargon until the words bent to fit his mouth. Sometimes she asked him to explain an engine to her as if it were a poem. He would, describing timing and spark the way people describe longing. Laughter came easier. So did quiet. On a Thursday, Caroline walked into Autotech in a silk blouse and careful face. She avoided the oil spots like puddles and set a gift bag on the counter. "For your lobby," she said, pulling out a glossy magazine and a framed article, "Carter Foundation expands arts education." Olivia smiled despite herself. Ethan wiped his hands and thanked her. Caroline's eyes softened when she saw the plant in the corner and the handwritten promise on the counter. "This place is not what I imagined," she admitted. "It's better." Ethan nodded. "It's small, but it's honest." Caroline looked at him the way people look when a sentence changes a room. "I hope the city deserves you," she said, and left. A small victory. Then the ground shifted. Saturday night, after close, Ethan turned off the bay lights and stepped into the alley to roll the recycling bin. Somewhere down the block, a bottle cracked. He heard laughter, young, careless, and a car spool up and shut down. He kept moving. The alley was a place for keeping your eyes where your feet were. He didn't see the paint until morning. "Stay in your lane," scrawled in red across the roll-up door, letters running like fresh wounds. A side window cracked, spiderwebbed from a thrown wrench that hadn't fully committed to breaking. Ethan stood there too long, jaw locked so tight it hurt. The smell of solvent already lived in his memory, years of cleaning off what other people threw. Olivia pulled in behind him, hair tied, no makeup, the kind of face you wear when you expect a fight and bring a broom instead of a sword. She took in the words, the window, the wrench on the ground with its skinned knuckles of chrome. "Cameras?" she asked, calm as a doctor. "Next week," he said. "I was pricing them." She nodded, went to the supply closet, came back with gloves and rags and a half-used can of remover. "Then this week we clean," she said. They worked without speaking. The paint bled pink onto rags. The first pass took the rage edge off the letters. By the third, the message thinned to a ghost. Mr. Johnson arrived with a ladder and a jug of the industrial stuff that eats skin and pride equally. He set it down with a curse that wasn't loud so much as accurate. "You going to file a report?" he asked. Ethan shrugged. "Against words?" "Against people who think words on walls build rooms," Johnson said. "Paper matters." Olivia photographed the damage before they erased it. Margaret showed up an hour later with lemon bars and a small, heavy box. "Cameras," she said. "Your grandfather's were film. Yours can be smarter." Her gaze flicked over the nearly gone letters. "Pretty sign," she added. "Shame to waste it on someone else's handwriting." By noon, the door was steel again, blank and sure. The window was boarded with neat plywood, edges sanded so no splinters held on. Ethan washed his hands at the shop sink until the water ran cold. He looked at his face in the bent mirror, stubbled, tired, some mix of fury and resolve burning down to coals. "I can shut it down," he said quietly to Olivia, as if offering a kindness. Return the lease. Cut losses before the real hits come. I don't need rooms that spit my name back at me with paint. Olivia set a clean rag on the counter and stood in front of him so he had to see her eyes. They didn't paint your name, she said, voice steady. They painted their fear. It doesn't stick unless we let it. He laughed once, short, without humor. Easy to say when you weren't sleeping under bridges people told you to stay beneath. Her jaw tightened. I can't change your past, she said, but I can stand in your present. And I can choose your future with you. He looked past her at the bay, at the pegboard where wrenches hung like vertebrae, at the training bench penciled on the floor in tape, at the plant that refused to die. Across town, a blog refreshed. Another anonymous line tossed like a pebble into a lake. In here, 3 people who knew the weight of work stood under a sign that told the truth. Ethan exhaled. Okay, he said. We keep the door open. But tomorrow, Olivia said, softer. We host a free clinic. Basic checks, fluids, tire pressure, brake pads. No questions asked, no fees. She glanced at the window. We'll fill the room with a different kind of writing. He frowned, thinking, then nodded. And we'll need cones. A sign-in sheet that doesn't scare folks. And coffee. Strong, Mr. Johnson added. And someone to watch the kids while parents listen. I'll call the literacy program, Olivia said. They owe me a favor. Her smile tilted. Or I owe them a chance to be angels. Ethan wiped the last streak from the door. The steel reflected the sky now, pale, stubborn blue. He pressed his palm flat to it as if feeling for a heartbeat. Let them paint, he murmured. We'll answer with engines that start. Behind him, Olivia reached for his free hand, not for show, not for comfort the way people do when cameras point, but the way you steady yourself on a ladder. Quiet, exact. He squeezed back once. Not a promise of ease, a promise to stay. As they locked up that night, the voicemail light on the office phone blinked. Ethan pressed play. A voice he didn't know spoke in a low drawl. Saw your sign, heard good things. But folks are saying you don't belong. I think you belong. I got a fleet that needs someone who listens. Call me Monday. Ethan and Olivia stared at the handset, then at each other. The paint was gone. The window still needed glass. The world had not voted in their favor. Only one voice in a chorus had shifted. Sometimes that was how songs changed. They left the bay in darkness, the new cameras watching, the plywood catching last light like a held breath. Outside, the air smelled of hot metal and cut lemons. Somewhere a car turned over clean, and somewhere else a can rattled into an alley trash bin. Between those sounds the path to morning stretched, narrow, lit enough. The kind you took together or not at all. Autotech was no longer a whisper. 3 months after the paint on the bay door had dried, the shop hummed with steady traffic. Families came for oil changes, fleet owners left trucks for tune-ups, and every Saturday the free clinic filled the sidewalk with strollers, bikes and laughter. Ethan learned to balance invoices with greasy palms, and Olivia's quiet marketing, flyers at cafes, posts on neighborhood forums, spread faster than any billboard. The city noticed. A local news station asked to film a segment, From Streets to Success, the Autotech story. Olivia hesitated but agreed, believing the light could strengthen their legacy. Ethan prepared with the same care he gave to engines, ironing his only blazer, polishing his boots until the leather shone. The morning of the shoot, the shop gleamed. Tools in order, bays swept, coffee strong. Olivia greeted the crew with her steady grace. Ethan shook hands firmly, though the cameras made his shoulders stiff. Just speak your truth, Olivia whispered, smoothing the collar he kept tugging. The interview began. Ethan stood by the pegboard, explaining why they charged for diagnostics. Thinking is labor, he said, voice clear, and honesty is cheaper than lies in the long run. The cameraman nodded, filming close. Then the reporter asked the question Ethan feared. You once lived on the streets. How does someone like that end up here, with a millionaire by his side? The shop seemed to still. Ethan inhaled. "I carried a toolbox," he said. "It was enough to remind me who I was. Olivia didn't rescue me. She recognized me." He glanced at her. "This place exists because she believed, but also because I refused to stop working." The answer was simple, but the clip aired that night with edits. His paws stretched, his gaze framed beneath a bold caption, "From homeless to heiress's partner. Fairy tale or fantasy." By morning, the phones rang not with bookings, but with curiosity sharp as knives. Some called to cheer, others to sneer. Anonymous voices muttered, "Kep man, garage boy, she'll tire of him." At noon, Ethan stepped outside for air. A luxury SUV idled at the curb. Inside, a man in a suit lowered the window. "Nice story," he said. "But don't mistake charity for respect. Men like me write checks. Men like you cash them." The engine roared, and the SUV peeled away, leaving Ethan in exhaust fumes that smelled too much like memory. That night, he sat in the guest house, papers spread like wreckage across the table. Invoices, part receipts, loan schedules. Olivia found him staring at them as if they were enemies. "They'll never see me," he muttered. "They don't have to," she said gently. "I see you. It's not enough if every room keeps deciding before I open my mouth." He clenched a fist. "I can build engines, but can I build a life that survives their laughter?" Olivia knelt beside him, taking his hand despite the grease smudges. "You already are, but you don't have to do it alone." For the first time, Ethan let his forehead drop to her shoulder. His body shook. Not with tears, but with the strain of holding a world too heavy for one pair of arms. The next weekend, they were invited to a gala at the Civic Center, an award dinner for innovators in community business. Olivia urged Ethan to come, believing visibility could rewrite the narrative. He resisted, then agreed, unwilling to let fear dictate the room. The hall glittered with chandeliers and polished shoes. Olivia in a midnight dress, Ethan in his blazer, stood together as cameras flashed. For a while, the evening flowed. Polite applause, speeches, wine glasses clinking. Then, during a pause between courses, a young executive with a grin too wide raised his voice from a nearby table. "Hey, Miller," he called across the linen. "Got a minute? My Maserati's acting up. Think you can fix it here? Or do you need a bridge to sleep under first?" Laughter rippled, cruel and loud. Silverware clattered. Ethan froze, the words hitting like fists. Olivia's eyes blazed, but before she could rise, Margaret Carter stood. She was small against the grand stage, but her voice cut like a bell. "My father fixed engines under a tin roof," she said, calm but sharp. "He taught me that work done with dignity outranks money earned with arrogance. If any of you laugh at Ethan Miller, you laugh at my father too." The hall fell into hush. The executive shifted in his seat, color draining from his grin. Olivia reached for Ethan's hand under the table, squeezing hard. For the first time, he didn't pull away in shame. He let the weight rest with her. Later, on the Civic Center steps under the stars, Ethan exhaled like a man surfacing from deep water. "I wanted to leave," he admitted. "Run. Hide." "But you didn't," Olivia said. "No," he murmured, "and maybe that's the real win." He looked at her, eyes fierce in the night glow. "But it can't stop here. We need to build bigger, stronger, a place no laugh can crack." She smiled, heart pounding. "Then we will." In the reflection of the glass doors behind them, their figures stood side by side, unequal in fortune, but even in fire. That night, Ethan lay awake, the gala replaying in fragments. Jeers, defense, applause. He felt both smaller and larger than he'd ever been. And in the quiet hours before dawn, he rose, sketched on scrap paper, and drew not just bays and benches but classrooms, outreach centers, a foundation bigger than any garage. When Olivia found him at sunrise, head bent over blueprints, he looked up with eyes no longer haunted. "We're not just fixing cars anymore," he said. We're fixing futures." She kissed his grease-smudged temple, and for the first time, neither of them flinched from the light. Spring painted Austin in wildflowers, roadsides blooming with bluebonnets like oceans under the sun. Autotech was no longer just a garage, it had become a hub. 3 bays worked full, a waiting area always occupied by neighbors, families, and the occasional fleet manager. On Saturdays, the free clinics spilled onto the sidewalks, with kids chasing chalk drawings while parents learned about oil changes and budgeting. Ethan stood by the training bench one morning, guiding a teenager through the steps of tightening a belt. "Listen to the squeak," he said. "That's the sound of friction begging for attention." The boy laughed, trying again until the squeak softened. Around them, Olivia organized a volunteer sign-in sheet, her dress simple but her presence radiant. 50 families this week, she whispered to Ethan when the line finally thinned. "Do you realize what this means?" He did, but more than numbers, it meant belonging. The same walls once marked with graffiti now carried posters of schedules, charts, and a mural painted by local artists. Honest hands, open doors. That night, Ethan drove Olivia to a small warehouse on the east side. He'd kept it secret, a surprise months in the making. When he rolled up the door, Olivia gasped. Inside sat a faded Volkswagen Beetle, once rust, now restored to a deep sky blue. Its chrome shone under the hanging bulbs, and the seats had been restitched in cream leather. "I found it at a yard," he explained, voice low. "Broken. Forgotten. Like me once. Thought maybe we could call it ours." Olivia stepped closer, hand brushing the polished fender. "It's beautiful." "There's more." He opened the driver's door. On the dashboard, a small brass plate gleamed. Etched words read, "For every mile we'll build together." Beneath, a ring rested, simple gold, glowing under the light. Her breath caught. Ethan dropped to one knee, not dramatic, not rehearsed, just a man steadying himself before truth. "Olivia Carter, you saw me when I was invisible. You walked into rooms with me when others turned their backs. If love is building something that lasts, then I can't imagine building without you. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her smile. She bent down, pulled him up before the floor could claim him, and whispered, "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." The Beetle's engine turned over, purring like approval. The wedding was not a gala. It was held at the shop, bays cleared, floor swept, chairs borrowed from neighbors. Mr. Johnson officiated in a suit that didn't quite fit. Margaret Carter spoke softly of her father's lessons, voice trembling with pride. Caroline arranged flowers in coffee cans, mechanics, nurses, teachers, students, people who had walked through Autotech's door, filled the room with applause that felt like thunder. When vows were spoken, Ethan slipped the ring on Olivia's finger with hands that once trembled under bridges but now built legacies. She laughed through tears, kissed him, and the garage roared with cheers. Months later, Autotech had 3 locations. Ethan split his time between bays and classrooms, teaching apprentices who once thought work was only for surviving, not thriving. Olivia managed the foundation arm, funding scholarships for kids from neighborhoods like the one Ethan had slept in. Together, they gave talks at schools and community centers. One evening after a long day, Olivia found Ethan leaning on the hood of the Beetle, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. She slipped her hand into his. "You've become a symbol," she said softly. He shook his head. "I'm just a mechanic," she smiled. "A mechanic who built bridges stronger than concrete." He turned to her then, eyes full of quiet wonder. "Then we'll keep building until no one gets left outside the room." A year later in the guest house where it all began, Olivia placed Ethan's hand on her stomach and whispered the news. His silence lasted only a heartbeat before his laugh filled the room. Full, free, unstoppable. "A child," he said, voice breaking. "Our child." Their legacy would now have a heartbeat of its own. On the day the foundation opened its youth training center, Olivia stood before a crowd of students, parents, and neighbors. She told their story, not as a fairy tale, but as proof that dignity and love could build empires of hope. Ethan stood behind her, hands blackened from work, blazer still dusted with grease. When applause rose, he felt no urge to hide, because the laughter of scorn had been replaced by the roar of belonging. That night, in a quiet moment before bed, Olivia recorded a message for their online channel. Her voice was calm, steady, carrying the weight of their journey. This story isn't just ours. It's proof that love, courage, and dignity can overcome any barrier. Now I want to know from you, where are you listening from tonight? Share this story with someone who needs hope, and don't forget to subscribe, because we'll keep telling stories that remind us all. No one is invisible when love decides to see. She clicked upload. Beside her, Ethan placed the old toolbox on a shelf, not to carry anymore, but to remember. The screen went dark, but their story had only begun, etched not in marble but in every heart that believed that even the most broken engines and the most scarred lives could be restored.